Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, aka Caliban, and my perfect anti-stress blend is 2 parts puppies, 1 part bunnies, and just a sprinkle of chinchillas. Joining me on the show as usual is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
How have you been?
Good, great. Can't complain. Watching Love Island with the roomies until 7:55.
Nice.
Hilarious show.
Yeah.
Doing great.
Yeah. Good to hear. It's good to be back with you on the show here. The show that is, of course, a Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power show, as we know. And you've seen the 3rd episode of Rings of Power, the most recent one, I'm sure.
Sure have.
Still under the spell of the ring?
Yes, 100%. And I will remain so, I think, for the rest of my life, it seems, as with Star Trek. But I love it. I mean, I was very shocked. This episode was so exciting, the 3rd episode. I'm starting to feel like, it's amazing to see like these new locations, like, because we saw a familiar location, familiar from, if you read the appendices of the Silmarillion.
Right.
And that was like, I was like so excited. And that my roommate was like, Ella, do you want to tell me where they are? Like, do you want to tell me where they're going? And I was like, yes.
Can I get the non-nerd translation, please? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, real quick. So, yeah, I'm loving it. What about you? Have you seen the 3rd episode?
I did, and I also like it. And I think that, a TV show that is, really finds its stride when it's through all the introductory stuff and like what is a show day to day. I've seen a lot of shows that, like a lot of Star Trek shows, the first season or 2 is not great, but when it kind of finds its rhythm, it's really good. And then I've also seen programs that are like, let me just tell you all this stuff. We have to tell you all this stuff. We have to exposit and set everything up. And then when the show is kind of going day to day, it's really good. And I like everything so far. I hope Rings of Power doesn't change much, once they're sort of into the main body of the show. And the fact that it's 5 seasons of 10 episodes apiece, from what I understand, I mean, it's Bezos, right? Like, he's going to greenlight the whole thing. He's not going to start this project and stop it. So if we get the whole thing, then it's probably very rigidly structured, and I'm sure that they've got it all paced out. And so all I'm saying is, like, I really like it, but, like a lot of things in Middle-earth, things seem nice for a time. Someone comes bearing gifts, but then it turns out those gifts, they're not so great. So I've always got that little demon of worry on my shoulder that they're going to screw this up somehow. But so far, so good.
Are you so excited to see Sauron next week, though? The reveal?
If that's what it really is. I don't suppose
you think it might not be Sauron?
Well, it seems a little early for Sauron, but they have definitely made him a presence. They've definitely not tried to fool you about the fact that, he is going to be in the show at some point.
Early, I was going to say early in the show's trajectory, or early as far as the Middle-earth calendar?
No, I mean, because he was around since the beginning, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, like in the show's trajectory. But, spoilers for the show, but there might be a different we might see him in sort of different ways. And so maybe this is the first way that we're going to see him, and then he'll disappear and come back in a different way. So, still mad about the werewolves, though. Where are my vampires? Where are my werewolves? Do you think that, like, I know that Tolkien was really big on the history, the collective mythology of the British Isles, and so like werewolves and like vampires, like when he had to come up with like, and then Sauron turned into I don't know, a vampire. It's spooky. It's a vampire. He just got done watching Bela Lugosi do something. So anyway, yeah, I want to see my vampires. But yeah, love the show still. And look forward to talking about it again on this Star Trek show in the future. As we probably shouldn't be doing. There isn't a lot of news in Star Trek this week. This is where we talk about the news usually. But, Star Trek Day was last week, so we're taking a little break here. But that's okay. We'll definitely have more news to talk about in the future. Let's just get right into it, and let's talk about the 4th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek Lower Decks. It's an episode called Room for Growth, and we're here to talk all about it. But first, as always, a warning. We are heading for the spoiler zone, listeners. So if you haven't seen the episode, this shall not be for you. The official synopsis for Room for Growth is Mariner, Boimler, and Tendi clash with their arch rivals, Delta shift, and the Cerritos engineers go on a mandatory relaxation leave. This episode is written by John Cochran and directed by Jason Zurich. Interestingly, we have a captain's log that opens the episode, but no star date for the episode. And there's no real facts. Basically, the regular guest, no big guest stars. What did you think about this episode, Room for Growth?
I loved it. I think it's my favorite so far this season.
Really? And you're not just saying that
Yeah.
because we like saying that.
No, not just because we're like saying that. It really was my favorite. I think it was like it reminded me more of like how I felt watching the first couple of seasons. Like it felt like very like I love a good bit about how they're living in bunks,
Yeah.
very lower decks. I
Yeah, we
also
had that for
liked
sure.
how yeah, I liked the some like platonic bonding. The besties
Yeah,
are on an
right.
adventure within the ship,
Yeah.
not outside the ship. Like we're working with the characters we already know. Um, yeah, I just thought it was really good. I thought it was very well rounded. What did you think?
Nice. I also there are parts of it that I liked and parts that I didn't, and like my title for the episode would be "Growing Pains," maybe
Mm,
because I think the show is still is sort of embodying some of the conflicts that we've been talking about, in this season specifically. Again, we had another like really strong A story and a B story. It was sort of like funny situations, but light on actual jokes. I feel like the first season, maybe the second season, because they literally did it in the second season, but second season Lower Decks would have made an entire episode out of Captain Freeman becoming Masaka, or whatever, and
oh
doing
yeah.
the masks thing. But instead, that served as the backdrop for two, I think, pretty interesting stories of character development. But at the same time, the show is, I feel, still caught between like being kind of funny, more humorous, and not necessarily completely landing the character development. The idea of like these guys are pals, they've got ambitions, to break out of literally their lower deck in this case, but it's really about like no, we really like enjoy working with each other. That's a totally valid thing. We like seeing that a couple times, like what if one of them got the room and then we had to like deal with somebody being out of the group or just something like that. And then I was really, the premise of the captain ordering her people to go on a relaxation trip, and then the runner of them like subtly like working like at the spa. I thought that was really great, and it seemed like it was ending in an emphasis on the fact that really the person that needs to relax is the captain, because this is really more about Freeman's uh, control freak persona. And also there's a line in there about how she's like, you guys don't respect me because you won't relax when I tell you to. And so I thought that was really interesting. Like that really told us something about the character, but then they sort of like just made it, oh, it's because she was possessed by the mask. And so we made this machine that can just relax you when we like push a button. And I thought like, no, that was a really good chance to like kind of dig into like to Freeman more and like see her kind of confront that aspect of her personality. But I don't know, maybe we need her to be that same person to be the angry police captain, to her loose cannon lower deckers. I don't know. So
I
like,
also feel like all the time the bridge crew, because it is lower decks, like the bridge crew sometimes is kind of that where we don't dig into them a ton.
yeah, yeah,
Like sometimes it is like one note for an episode.
yeah. They've been doing some interesting stuff with Ta'ana, because she's been in like almost every one of these episodes
Yeah.
this year. And so I was hoping that we get something like that. So anyway, I just thought that it was still funny and it was still a good setup, but like they kind of just, they missed a chance to like kind of like hook on to that character aspect. But otherwise, yeah. Did you think that like, obviously the show's always about Easter eggs and things like that, but did you think that like the dove, relaxation ship, was that like a reference to? I thought maybe it was Day of the Dove, but nobody's fighting with swords. So like, was it a reference to? There's a TOS episode called Dagger of the Mind where they go to an asylum, but it's also like people are sort of like relaxing and sort of like getting their head straight. And their symbol, remember back in the old days, every ship or installation had its own symbol. Its symbol was like a dove. I thought that maybe it was a reference to that. Otherwise, I have no idea why it's called
Could be.
dove. Yeah,
Well, just because peaceful.
yeah, that's lame though. if that's all it is.
You're like, if it's not referencing one insignia from this specific
Well,
TOS
I don't know. I mean,
episode,
the show's trained me to do that.
as it
Like,
should. And I think it's equally likely that it's just called the dub because piece, or that it's a very
yeah.
like that specific reference.
But now I think all the references I don't get are references to like living in California, like the whole thing with the churros and all the ships and stuff like that. I mean, there was definitely a reference in the character of, I can't remember the character's name, but the Adosian character,
Hmm.
because they love their TAS references. And so I like the idea that she's got like that extra arm, but she just like vapes with it. And she wants to get a mani, which is like a petty for your hand toes. Yeah, that was funny.
That was funny. It also Freeman reminded me of this episode of, I was just talking to somebody who used to work at I used to work at like this board game place, and we would have these staff meetings where they would be like, and now we're gonna play board games together. And and I was talking to my old coworker, and he was like, remember how everybody would leave? And I worked there after he did. He was like, remember how everybody would leave and not play these board games? And I was like, when I was there, it did not feel optional. It was like, now we are breaking into tables and we will be playing games.
Right.
This is a teamwork.
Sorry,
team
you're
building,
playing Monopoly. Yeah, right. Yeah.
which was which was great, but was funny because it was like, we will be having fun together at this scheduled time.
Yeah.
Panera will be provided.
Yeah. Well, at least it's that and not like a team building exercise. You know, you can play.
Oh yeah, I have no complaints. I was not, and my coworkers were cool, so I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're gonna chill and play board games.
Little
But
Catan and turkey bacon Bravo, and you're good to go. Yeah.
exactly.
Speaking of relaxing, I thought that it was very question creating. I had a lot of questions, I guess is what I'm trying to say, about, let's talk about crime play. So I've always suspected one of the things that I like about Lower Decks that is also frustrating about Lower Decks is that I feel like Lower Decks being written by people who are not only Star Trek fans, but are self-consciously, creating a Star Trek world that is aware of itself. We've always just suspected that like people go into the holodeck and like do weird stuff, right? Like they're doing weird sex stuff or like they're like serial murdering people and then like coming
I mean,
out
that's
and being
pretty heavy.
like,
I mean,
I feel better. Yeah, yeah.
in DS9, it's like pretty.
Yeah, I don't, well, yeah, but even on DS9 though, Quark is selling that, and everybody's like, I don't think so. Like, I'm not going to do that. So it's interesting to see Shax and Ta'ana basically playing like Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Studebaker in the holodeck, and being honest about the fact that it's like, yeah, we're here to murder people, and then we're gonna like have sex in the blood and make them watch, and I'm totally like. I'm fine with that. I don't care, but it's interesting to have Lower Decks, which is canon. This show is canon, to sort of canonize that in a way that's really what goes on, and it isn't just Riker just hanging out with women in sort of gauzy outfits, feeding him grapes. Like people are actually like getting into it. But so anyway, I thought that was really
Mr. McMahon.
kind of interesting. Yeah, and I also like the fact that they're robbing a bank, but then the lower deckers are like, oh, I think it's like a bonk or something. Oh yeah, I gotta go to the bonk. Give me some of this money, this worthless paper.
That did when he said bonk. That did make me laugh, but I think it was because it just sounded like somebody going like bonking you on the
right,
head.
bonk on the head. Oh, that's a
Sound
reference.
like bonk, and I was like, ha.
Yeah. So I thought that was really progressive for the show to sort of canonize that sort of stuff. Something that kind of like threw me though was also the part where they inhale the crazy gas because they're in the root structure or the bottom of the hydroponics, and so we had like that was fun, I guess, but a sort of kind of pointless like hallucination scene. And I was thinking like, if you want our characters to like hallucinate like they're on drugs, just have them take drugs. Right? Like you've got this is a universe with like no money. It's a communist universe. Everybody shares all the resources. And also we're cool with like you murdering people in the holodeck, fake people. So like, of course people would have like recreational drugs, right? Like, isn't it? This other person is vaping something. So if
I
you
don't
want
know,
them
because
to,
they have it's synthahol, right? So you can't get drunk.
well, that's because
in
they're
theory.
right. But that's because they're like military people that are on duty and they need to.
Yeah.
If a Nagilum shows up, they have to snap to and go to their stations. But so I would like to see the show be a little more progressive about if you want them to hallucinate, they can just take drugs. Or is that like too far? Like we don't want to see our characters do
I don't know.
that.
I guess I felt like the hallucination that this episode was just like part of their like silly
Their weird
escapades on the way
odyssey.
to
Yeah.
the yeah thing. Although it would be funny for it to be like for Boimler to be like sober sitting them while they do like space acid.
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I want to see. Yeah. Some character growth like that. I'd have
Some
to,
character growth on acid.
well, people,
What's the weird ayahuasca, space
right.
ayahuasca?
Yeah. People laugh at Blazing Bev, but I'm like, she would be totally prescribing ayahuasca, she'd be prescribing hallucinogens for PTSD. Think about the PTSD
Uh-huh.
that these people have when Nagilum is showing up every other week and like crushing people's skulls and stuff. Um, so that's all I'm saying. I don't even do drugs, but I'm just saying, let's see some drugs in the future.
I
Um,
don't do drugs, but I want them in my television.
yeah, that absolutely. I don't. What else don't I do? I don't fight orcs, but I want to see people fight orcs.
You know what? Snay.
I don't cry when I cut a tree down, but I want to see an elf cry when he cuts a tree down.
That was tough.
Speaking about speaking of people doing weird things, what what was going on with the churro wife bit? I feel like there's either like in the writers' room of Lower Decks, there's either one person that pitches weird stuff and they have to give him one every week, or they're like, let's do one really weird thing. Forget Star Trek. Let's just have a weird thing every
It's
week.
Brad. Blame Brad.
Okay, and this week it's like, what if a guy like had like a churro wife that he kept somewhere that he had to replenish?
That was a bit. I was kind of like, whoa.
Which is look, be gross, but don't be confusing and gross, because it's like, all right, so is he
You
like
know what?
he's coming in
Yeah,
this thing,
that's the
right?
read.
That's what's
That's the
happening,
read.
right?
Well, that's what I was like. Well, in my room, one of my roommates is watching with me, and it was my roommate. Her nickname is like Her Majesty, and I was like, right in front of Her Majesty on Lower Decks.
But then at the end, he goes and he orders more churros, and so my question
Yeah,
is,
so it's fine.
so is he replacing the churro? Do you know what the idea experiment, the thought experiment? I invented a new thing called the ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
The idea of the ship of Theseus is an old ship, and they replace all the boards. And if you've replaced every original board, is it still the ship of Theseus? So if you replace all the churros in Ransom's churro wife, is it still Churolivia? That's what I want to know. I think it's an important question to ask.
I guess it's an incredibly important question, and we ask the hard hitters on this show,
We have
which is
to.
the important part. I guess either he's replacing the churros in Churolivia, or the bag of churros was for a separate occasion.
Yeah, like is he cheating on Churolivia? Does he have a side piece of
Could
churros?
be.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. All I'm saying is the show's asking the questions. We're trying to answer them.
Every week.
Here's a question that is existential in nature.
Sure.
Why are have we talked about this? Why are our characters not crewmen instead of ensigns? Wouldn't that be the real lower decking? Or is there something special about being a junior officer and having responsibility, but no actual responsibility? Because we all know that people like Chief O'Brien like actually work. They work for a living.
The same thing as thinking that an unpaid intern is actually tweeting off of the McDonald's account
Okay.
is way funnier than being like, I don't know. I lost it.
Okay.
But
right, but you're saying
the ensigns are the interns.
Yeah.
And that is the funny joke, because they have, in theory, this is a corporate job, corporate being Starfleet.
Sure.
So I think it's funnier that way. It's funnier that they have the lowest rank. You know what I mean?
Sure. But it is a rank though.
Yeah.
Or at least a rank in terms of an officer rank. Yeah. Okay. I can see that.
I think it's funnier that they have that little bit of they have one pip.
I would imagine though, like if you're, a lieutenant, and you just come out of the academy, and you have to bunk in the hallway with like the men. You're like, what did I go to officer school for, right? Like,
Yeah.
if this is the future that liberals want, we're all living in the same hallway. Uh, so yeah, it makes sense, but it's just interesting that like they're all. But that's the way that they've always shown it on Star Trek. Like literally everybody is an officer, when the reality would be
Yeah.
everybody would be a crewman, and then there would be like one
Yeah.
officer. Um, just make everybody an officer. That is the future that liberals want.
And that is the future the liberals want. It's
They
the
all
future that I
got
want.
their participation trophies. Um, Anything else that you saw in particular about the episode? Anything you want to call out?
I don't know, but I had a question prep for you. That's
Yeah.
not about this episode in particular, but it is about Star Trek.
Okay.
So I was watching the Emmys,
Yeah.
and they had during some kind of thing that was like, I don't know if it was like a CBS whatever. It was something, it was a commercial for a bunch of TV shows.
Yeah.
And so the entire Emmys, and there was like one, 1 second shot of Sonequa in the captain's chair.
Oh.
And it got me thinking like how far into like Star Trek being the premiere show on Paramount Plus, like on Paramount Plus's streaming service, do we have to get before we start getting the Emmy noms? And will we ever get the Emmy noms? So like, will there ever be a Star Trek show that is Emmy nom worthy? Not that I know if people are like, oh, Emmys mean nothing, whatever. But what do you think?
It's still. I haven't really paid attention to the Emmys in a while, um, but I think it's still an uphill road for genre fare, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the
And that's what I was thinking.
the Friday
Because I was
Night
watching
Lights
it and I was like,
and the Mad Men's, and all my references are
yeah.
10 years old because I don't pay attention to the
It's,
Emmys.
so
But
it's the Ted Lasso and the
yeah,
Barry.
yeah, yeah, and the Barry.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I didn't realize was still on the air.
Yeah, well, so
And I think
know.
the only, and I might need to be corrected, but I feel like the only genre show I noticed was What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah,
And I was surprised to see them. Respectfully, I was surprised to see them.
okay, here's my answer. I've just recently gotten into, I know it's been on for a while, but I've just gotten into For All Mankind recently.
Mm-hmm.
And like For All Mankind is it's pulling off this amazing like Jean-Claude Van Damme straddling the semis trick of being both 100% boomer bait, but also progressive in its politics. And it's got something for sci-fi people. It's got something for like old NASA heads and like, space race people. Everybody on it is super hot. Like it should be the next Mad Men, but I don't know what it is. It's getting Saturn Awards, but it's not getting like mainstream award attention. And it's it's Ronald D. Moore. It's like well written, it's well structured, and people are kind of ignoring it. And I think it's because it has like the sort of sci-fi trappings to it. People don't take it seriously because it's like, science fiction. So I think it's an uphill battle. I think if it ever happens, I think it would have to be, it's probably not going to be any of the shows that are on now. It'd have to be something new, and it would have to be something that, and Paramount is not, I don't think Paramount's very good at this right now. They're good at like telling you there are shows, but it's not good at like finding the niches within the niche audience. But they would have to sell it as this is like the prestige thing. This is like next level. And it would probably have to have some kind of time travel thing so that there's a character or a setting that is like in the modern day. So there's a connection to the audience. Yeah. And they would have to do something because there are specific episodes of Star Trek and even like the newer Star Trek shows that are like about something that's kind of like right now, like the episode with the indigenous guy that was, a metaphor for like the treatment of indigenous people. Or, I don't know, like something like Carbon Creek, where the Vulcans are like back in the 50s. Something that has some kind of more connection and isn't just like, we're outside of the galaxy and we're trying to find the 10C and, they smell their feelings. And I don't think that's going to win an Emmy. I don't think that it shouldn't. But, yeah, I think that we'd have to get, something that'll impress the straights.
The straights.
Yeah. But I'd like to see it happen.
That's what I tell myself every day.
I'd like to see it happen. There's so many Star Trek shows. And I think that, it would be great if we could get some attention like that. But so I have a question for you. um, one good turn deserves another. And I was thinking the other day that like we've got all these shows. There's a new show, every week or whatever. Um, but I feel like I'm getting kind of bored of Star Trek, either trying to do Star Trek or trying to be some other show and make it a Star Trek show. So, like, I know this is reductive, but Lower Decks is like Star Trek Rick and Morty, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Strange New Worlds is just like, what if J.J. Abrams made TOS? And these are all reductive, obviously. And like Discovery can be whatever you want it to be, and it has been. It's been kind of trying out. Now we're going to say the F word. Now we're going to do this, do that. It's been trying out different things, but
Testing the
generally it
waters.
kind of defaults to we're running down a corridor. We're going to kick some guys and shoot a guy, and then
Mm-hmm,
go talk about our feelings. Again, this is all
mm-hmm.
reductive, and I would like to see Star Trek like once more do something that nobody else can do. And for a long, long time, ever since TOS and even into TNG and like the Rick Berman years, it was Star Trek was characteristic Star Trek to the point where if you say we're Seth MacFarlane and you wanted to make a space show, it was going to look like Star Trek. There's nothing you could do about it. Even if you were, I mean, you were kind of he's doing that intentionally. So I'm wondering like what the next when Star Trek going to like do something again that isn't like a different show. Do you know what I mean? Isn't like, well, sometimes I like my space flavored action as Star Trek, and sometimes I like it as a different sci-fi show that's on. Was there a question?
I
I don't know.
I sense the question, and my answer might not be an answer, but my answer is that my fear is that no new Star Trek show is ever going to feel the same as the older Star Trek shows. Like it's at no point is it going to be exact. Like the other night, I couldn't sleep until like I was up at like 4 a.m. And I got up and I went out into our living room and I got on the couch with a blanket and I put on the original series and it was like so comforting and I was like a little kid on the couch again
Yeah.
and I conked out and it's I maybe in 20 years and we've watched it for 20 years it's going to feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that until then it's always going to feel like something new and something different because it's a new show. Like it's the same thing with like when Next Gen came out and there was all kinds of tea, like it's different and it's not Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna feel different because it's a little different.
Yeah.
But like that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's a part of it. Like, I'm not just talking about how it feels and like its
Yeah,
significance
yeah,
for
yeah.
me, but that definitely is a big part of it. But I just mean, um, like DS9. DS9 obviously is connected to Star Trek. They want it to feel like Star Trek, but they're doing stuff that like nobody else is doing. Like we have like this outpost. If anything, it's an old west show. It's Gunsmoke,
Yeah,
or it's something like
yeah.
that. And we have like these two weird alien races that are fighting, and there's a wormhole that's a temple of time traveling aliens, and we're exploring just all kinds of themes, and it was doing something that like nobody had ever done to the point where again, people didn't like it when it came out. A lot of people didn't think that it felt like Star Trek. And I just feel like Star Trek now, for the most part, a lot of the shows that we've talked about on Discoverage, is Star Trek trying to prove that it can do what other shows do. Like this is Star Trek action. This is Star Trek time travel. This is Star Trek,
A Star Trek for
general
everyone.
space show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just taking like blah and saying it's Star Trek blah. And I would just like to see them propose something, pitch something, produce something that is totally that just is uniquely Star Trek. Like even Prodigy, which I've enjoyed, it's cousin to a Star Trek Rebels type thing. It even kind of looks like Star Trek Rebels, and I enjoy it, but I recognize that, and so I wish there was just I wish they'd take a chance and just come up with some premise that's just really out there. Section 31 has an opportunity to do something if they ever make this show, has an opportunity to explore a part of the Star Trek universe that we haven't seen before or only fleeting glimpses of. I just feel like the Starfleet Academy show is just going to be, I think we can all imagine what that is going to look like. It might be really entertaining. I still
I was
think
gonna say it's gonna be damn
Gossip,
fun.
Yes, Gossip Girl and Star Trek Gossip Girl. I'd watch it, but I can describe it as Star Trek Gossip Girl, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I'm not looking for a particular answer, but I was just having that thought the other day that it's like, I feel like I've kind of
I will,
seen
and
a
I
lot of
think
this.
also you start getting into like the media studies part where it's like, well, how much has television changed and how much has streaming changed
Yeah,
television,
yeah,
and like what are audiences expecting, and like are they like I think it would be hard to surprise audiences now. Like I feel like the last time people were like, "Well, this is crazy," is like when The Walking Dead was like, "We'll kill anyone. Try
yeah.
me." You
I
know what I
suppose.
mean?
Yeah, but even that, The Walking Dead is like a perfect case study for let
Yeah.
it die. Shoot it in the
Yeah.
head. You brought
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
but see the thing, but there's another side of it, which is you brought up Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is going on its like 14th season, and it is the exact same thing that it's always been. Oh, sure, side characters come and
And
go,
it had
but it's still
Emmy
Larry.
nominations.
It just runs into other weird characters, and it's the exact same thing.
And
So
me in my head, I was like, Curb Your Enthusiasm is a show that's old. I was like,
yeah,
that's an old show that isn't on the air anymore.
yeah,
Like truly had no idea. And then they showed a clip, and I was like, this is still on.
yeah,
Anyways.
yeah, yeah. It's pre smartphone. It's pre a
Hmm.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
You know what I would love? I would love a Star Trek Succession.
Um, well, okay. Again, maybe we're the guilty ones because I would watch that, but I'm tired of pitches like that. But I think that
I would watch
I think there's
Star
a
Trek
lot of
anything.
I think there's a Star Trek Mad Men. I think there's a lot of pitches that we have to go through still before this change happens. I would like to
The
see
winner, yeah.
a Star Trek blah and not blah Star Trek. There you go.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
the
know. I
quote.
wonder what would so are you looking for something to push the boundaries of television, or to push the boundaries of Star Trek? Like, are we looking
I
at like, so let's like DS9 as an example is like, okay, everyone was like, okay, it's not Star Trek, it's on a space station and not a ship.
yeah.
So like if it was like a Star Trek show that was entirely set, maybe like Starfleet Academy, like entirely set on Earth, or a Star Trek show that was entirely set on like a colony.
What I'd like, and this is tough because, the guy, no, it's not tough. The guy that created all this, Gene Roddenberry, has been gone for a long time. And his creation has evolved and gone on perfectly without him. It's not that we don't miss him, but it doesn't need him. But when I think of like, how in Discovery, certainly in season 3, but a lot in season 4, they constantly say, "We are Starfleet." They have
Mm-hmm.
like taken the idea of what it is to not only be a Star Trek show, but a Star Trek fan, and they've internalized that into their narrative so that their narrative is about, we need to preserve Star Trek. And I think that is a valid story to tell, but not everything needs to tell that story. And
Mm-hmm.
you've created, is Star Trek a place, or is it a thing you go to feel good about a sci-fi show that you watch? Or is it a vehicle for telling stories about the human race through the
Mm-hmm.
lens of aliens and stuff like that? And if that's true,
Asgard isn't a place, it's a people.
okay, all right, Marvel fan. We got a Marvel fan
You
here.
said it. We
Uh,
got pull the fire alarm.
this is like that's Flash. He's DC back there. But like in the same way that like TOS and TNG are like Kennedy's Camelot in space. We're vaguely progressive, and oh boy, sometimes you meet an aliens and they haven't got it all figured out. But then maybe we haven't got it all figured out. DS9 took that, said, okay, this is the kind of stories that we want to tell. We're changing this completely, and we are in a totally different place where there are like people who are angry and they deserve to be angry, but how far can anger take you? And they're angry at other people who were bad people, but they were people too, and they were forced to make some decisions. And do you know what I mean? Like it's the same, it's
Yeah,
still
I
Star
do.
Trek, but it's not the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm not a genius creator. I don't know what the next evolution is, but I'm aware that I need a next evolution for this. We got deep. This is Lower Decks. We're talking about Lower Decks. We got deep on this.
Lower Decks is a good show.
I'm not saying we got there because of
They
Lower
they
Decks,
they
but
they inspire us. I think they inspire
okay.
us to ask the real questions.
All right. Well, yes, it's a good show. And R.I.P. to Chur Olivia if she's still around. Okay. Well, is that
I
is that
just
it?
hear the One Direction song.
What's the run? What? What?
There's a One Direction song called Olivia,
Oh my
and
God.
and it's like I love Olivia, but I'm hearing churro, 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 churro Olivia.
Is that that's
Bum,
kind of
bum.
uncomfortable, isn't it? Or is that because
Now it
of
is.
so
No, this is from before.
oh, what?
I know.
That's weird.
Well, if you believe the rumors, they broke up.
That's well, I don't know which rumors to believe, and I don't think I've even heard them all. But anyway, that would be like I can do this. That would be like Paul McCartney marrying a woman named Michelle. There, I nailed it. Easy. And then it
And
turns out
that's
that
exactly what it's like.
but she's a director. He's not an actor. She's a music producer, and
He's an come on.
she
He's
breaks up
got
the
two
band.
movies coming out this
No, no,
year.
that would be like John Lennon writing a song called Yoko 3 years before he meets Yoko,
Yep.
and then he meets
Uh-huh.
Yoko, and the band breaks
Yep.
up. Yeah, all right, that's what it is. Second time. I'm always good on the second time. First time,
Nailed it.
never. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I think that's probably it for this week. Thanks for joining us, listeners. If you like what you hear, and it's possible you might, sometimes we talk about Star Trek, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both this show, Discoverage, and our main show, Enterprising Individuals, get released. You can tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage, and you can email us if you've got any thoughts or questions at EISTPOD@gmail.com. And while you're on the internet, head by your listening platform of choice and give us a rating and a review because we really appreciate it. It really helps us out. Subscribe to the show as well so you can get it as soon as it comes out. Discoverage will return on December 22nd for the 5th episode of the 3rd season of Lower Decks. We don't have any information about that yet, but it'll be funny, and we'll be here next Thursday to cover it. We'll be going live once again at 8 p.m. Central, so join us then, and you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook to get notified when we're live and broadcasting. In the meantime, check out our main show, Enterprising Individuals, at enterprisingindividuals.com. Every Wednesday on the show, I and a special guest discuss in excruciating detail a movie from the Star Trek series. We also have news from the Trek sphere and interviews with special guests. Our most recent episode just dropped, and on it I am joined by Sasha Wood of the YouTube channel Casually Comics to talk about Star Trek Insurrection, which is definitely the best Star Trek movie to have a hacky sack scene. I breathed in the middle of that, but it's definitely the best Star Trek movie to have a hacky sack scene. You can find that episode at enterprisingindividuals.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And that's it for this week. Ella, thanks for joining me to talk about Lower Decks. Remind people where they can find you online.
Thank you. You can find me at Gondor Gold, at Star Trek Unlimited when I have a spare moment in my day to tweet about Star Trek on Star Trek Unlimited. And I think that we should continue to start our Star Trek show talking about Lord of the Rings and then end it talking about Harry Styles.
Yes.
Because that really is that's the complete circle of my brainwaves, I think, in 2022 is like Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Harry Styles, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Harry Styles.
I'm trying to think of the late Second Age character that Harry Styles can appear as in later seasons of Rings of Power.
I'm going to take this assignment very seriously, and I'll be back with an answer next week.
Okay.
So until then, everyone listen to Keep on Tolkien. I
will expect your answer to that next week. You can find me on Twitter at KA1IBAN, and you can find all of the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening, and we're signing off. This is Aaron for Ella saying, live long and prosper.